Hi everyone, this is the screencast for ELL216 Language Politics, Language Policy, Language Planning, or as we call it, LPP. I'm GERRY HOWLEY. He's a very snowy me. You might have encountered me before in the Varieties of English module in your first year. More about me in a minute, but first of all my email address is g.howley@sheffield.ac.uk. If you have any questions about this course, please drop me a line and I'll do my best to answer them. First of all, tell you a little bit about what LPP entails. Languages are a part of us being human, and while language policy, politics and planning might sound pretty dry, it's actually a course about much more than just the politics of language. It's an area of sociolinguistics that is about very human, social and ethical dimensions of language planning. This module is about the everyday decisions that are made around the world about what languages we learn in school, what languages are used to teach in our educational institutions, how we should or should not nurture linguistic diversity, and how we deal with endangered languages. But as well as this official level, language planning also happens on a much more subconscious and informal level, within our social groups and families. It influences our decisions about what languages we choose to learn, what position we end up in socially as a result of what languages we know, and how that impacts on our future lives and careers. Another thing that is great about this course is that it's really relevant. Currently we're in a state of flux in European politics. We stand at a potentially pivotal time in relation to what our ideas of being a nation are, whether we're going to be members of Europe, our identity as English, British and European. Language has always been highly political and is fundamentally intertwined with identity, and this current European context is no different. Language is linked to how people define themselves and how we define others, so it's always been a means of control in society. This module is about what we do with our languages and why we do it. These are just some of the reasons why I enjoy teaching this course. There I am again, slightly warmer climes this time. I'm really interested in this subject because I'm a sociolinguist. My research examines migrants' acquisition of English here in the UK, in Manchester to be precise, and I've recently completed my PhD on the subject. I did my fieldwork during my research in school, and I found that the policies and practices around what languages can and can't be used in school really interesting, as well as the knock-on effect that that had on the migrants who I was working with. As well as that, the group of migrants I worked with were members of the Roma community, who've got a really long history of persecution and discrimination, and that includes discrimination against and oppression of their language. As part of this course, we look at how languages can be used and manipulated as a form of control and oppression of minorities. In relation to the course content, we start off by addressing issues around the standardisation of languages. From our very earliest years, we're taught that some features of languages are good and other features of language are bad. And this doctrine is based on the idea that there are standards in language. So for example, I speak standard English, just as you will know to speak and write a standard form of whatever your own language is. As part of the course, we examine how this culture of standardisation came about and what it means for so many of the minority languages that aren't standardised and aren't part of the dominant cultural ideology. After looking at standardisation, we move on to look at how that control is exercised in language matters in a vast range of contexts and in various parts of the world. Most of the world's 6,500 languages are minority languages that are unwritten and not officially recognised, and most of those languages are considered to be in danger. In the past 500 years, half of the world's languages have already died, and estimates indicate that another language may die every 10 to 14 days. Of course, languages change and languages die, and languages can be reborn and revitalised. Some of this happens naturally as a result of internal change in the language, but the vast majority of the time this happens to languages because people do things to them. Languages are manipulated and managed at every level, from in the home and the school right up to national and international governments. And in this module, we'll encounter the full range of intervention in languages. We do this by looking at case studies. Some examples of the case studies we look at over the course are the Welsh and Cornish languages in the UK, Breton, Catalan and Basque in areas around France and Spain, the many languages of Africa, Indigenous North and South American languages, as well as Australian Aboriginal languages. If you want to have a look and get an idea of some of the conversations that we might have in class, then there's loads of information about these languages online if you just Google them. We use these examples in class every week to illustrate what we're talking about. I use a broad range of multimedia in class, unlike what I'm able to do in this presentation, and we have loads of varied in-depth discussions. You have lots of opportunity to go out and find things that interest you and examples that you can bring back to class and talk about with the rest of the group. And this goes for the assessments as well, which I'll come on to in a second. While we look at examples of all of these different languages, you only need to be able to speak English to do this course. But if you do speak other languages, that's brilliant, because you can tell us about your experiences, what you know about the countries and cultures and the communities that use that language, and help us to better understand all of the different contexts of the world's communities and language speakers. So, moving on to the assessments. The assessments come in the form of 2 essays, each of which has 50% weighting and are 2,500 words. While you are guided by a choice of questions, there is a lot of scope for you to be innovative in how you answer the question and to pursue the topics that you've found interesting. With regard to teaching, we follow a structure of 1 lecture and 1 seminar per week, although the lecture doesn't really follow a formal lecture format. We have lots of discussions and there's plenty of opportunities for you to contribute to those discussions. We also have 1 study hour a fortnight, and this year we've concentrated on things like assessment preparation, structuring arguments, and looking at a variety of case studies. But in a lot of these sessions, you have the opportunity to dictate what you'd like the content to be. I like classes to be an open conversation for you to tell me what you're interested in, and I will try and cater to that. I try to make sure all my classes are relaxed, comfortable environments where everyone is happy to contribute and ask questions. So that's it. Feel free to contact me at g.howley@sheffield.ac.uk if you have any questions. You can also find me on Twitter for all language and migration related matters. Thank you very much for listening, and well done if you got this far.